where you add NaCl to it. You add NaCl to the system, right? And mixing takes place. So you have H2O plus NaCl, you have a saline liquid, and from here you take the liquid out, saline liquid out. Okay. Now what you will do is when you have to determine when you have to design this system, and you need to determine what should be the flow rate of water, inlet flow rate of water, what should be rate of addition of salt, what at what rate I should take the solution out, and so on. How large should the tank be? What should be the RPM of the stirrer, and so on. What will you do is you will write the dynamical equation. So you will basically write input rate minus output rate. There is no generation or there is no consumption by reaction or even by nuclear reaction. So you simply write here as accumulation rate, right? So and what is being accumulated? Let's say concentration of NaCl. So you will have dCA by d by dt of concentration of NaCl. This is what you want to find out, that what would be the concentration of NaCl in the so this is C NaCl in the tank, and this will be function of the flow rate, volumetric flow rate of, so let me use the symbol Q, volumetric flow rate of H2O, volumetric flow rate of, or mass flow rate of NaCl, right? It will depend upon this, and also of the outlet. So Q NaCl H2O at the outlet. Okay, so this will depend upon all of these things. Now, based on the analysis that we did till the last lecture, what you will do is basically you will determine the equilibrium solution. Okay, you will determine the equilibrium solution to the above equation. And let us remember, let's remind ourselves of why we are doing this, because we are, somebody has the mic on, please switch it off. So what you basically are trying to do is you are trying to design a continuous mixing tank so that you will do this operation in a continuous mode. So this operation has to be done in a continuous mode, right? Which means that you will start your plant and this operation will run for 6 months or an year, and then you will stop the plant, you will do the maintenance, and then you will start the plant again. So there will be a period of at the max 3 to 4 days or 1 week for this whole plant to get rehauled and cleaning and all sorts of maintenance. But otherwise for rest 360 days this whole process should run continuously without any external effort, isn't it? So now why should you worry about equilibrium solution of the above equation? Because once you reach the equilibrium solution of the above equation, what's going to happen? What you're going to have is time t and concentration of NaCl in the plant, and then there would be initial transients depending upon how this equation looks like. But ultimately what you would like is that then you have a constant you would have a constant concentration of NaCl, and this is nothing but, this one is nothing but the equilibrium solution, right? So this is my equilibrium solution. And then if you are in some kind of a utopian world, you would expect that equilibrium solution has been reached. So for the next 360 days, my plant would run as it is, right? But that never happens, right? So when I am trying to develop this design and trying to analyze what all can happen, I can safely use this particular methodology, the state space domain modeling, and I will be in a position to find out what should be Q, what should be M NaCl, what should be the output flow rate, so that it would give me some corresponding value of concentration of NaCl in the tank. But then when you started running the plant, suddenly you find that this screw conveyor has become faulty, right? So the output mass flow rate of NaCl, which it was supposed to give, it actually doesn't give somewhere after 150th day when the plant was operating. So then what's going to happen? You will again solve this equation with a new MnACl flow rate, and then you will determine the evolution, and that one may correspond to this new equilibrium solution, right? So this is new equilibrium solution. Now what I want to know is, how does the system evolve? So let me write what I exactly want to know. I want to know how does the system evolve between two equilibrium solutions. Okay, which means that you are sitting in your control room watching all the panels. There were a lot of gauges which would tell you what is the concentration, what is the flow rate, and so on. And then you are expecting a a concentration of CnACl1 in your gauge, and then suddenly you come next day and find out that the concentration is dropped from CnACl1 to CnACl2. And now what you would like to know is what is the behavior between these, which means that did it come like this, or did it come like this, or did it come like this, or did it come like this, and so on. What is the behavior of the system, or how does the system evolve between two equilibrium solutions? And a good way to analyze this particular situation when you want to know the dynamics between two equilibrium solutions is the transform domain modeling. Okay, so let's first, as usual, start with a first order system. So let's analyze a first order system. First order dynamics. Okay, so what is a general first order equation that we can write? If the first order equation is A dy by dt plus A0 y, A1 dy by dt plus A0 y equals B times U of t. Okay, so let us imagine that there is any differential equation which is first order, which describes the dynamics of your system, and that particular equation can be cast as this equation, which is of the form A1 dy by dt plus A0 y equals B U of t. It is possible to cast any of the first order equation in this form, ordinary differential equation in this form. Then I end up having these parameters. So now if we remember our analysis of these kinds of equations in state space domain, we found that the parameters A1, A0 and B will influence the dynamics of the system, not only quantitative but also qualitative, right? So therefore I would like to know the effect of A1, A0 and B on the dynamics of my system, but not in state space representation, but in the transform domain representation. And therefore what we do is we club these parameters in a specific manner, and we always write this as a1 by a0 dy by dt plus y. This will become y. This is equal to b by a0 u of t, right? And I will further reduce this as an equation in the standard notation. I'm sure you know the notation. This is tau dy by dt plus y equals capital K u of t, right? Where it's obvious that tau is a1 by a0 and capital K is b by a0, right? We will come to this a little later today. The tau is called the time constant. What is the physical significance? We'll come to it later. And K is called process gain. It's also called static gain, and it's also called simply gain. Okay. So now I have a first order ordinary differential equation, which is of the form tau dy by dt plus y equals k u of t, where tau is called the time constant. It is the ratio of the coefficient of dy by dt and the coefficient of y, and k is called the gain, and it is the ratio of coefficient of u of t and coefficient of dy of y. Okay. And now we have a specific term for these two quantities. So y u of t is called the input function or input variable, and this is also called the forcing function. And y, on the other hand, is called the input variable. It's called the input variable. Now, why is it called the input variable and why u is called the output variable? Sorry, this is the output variable. This is the output variable. Yeah, please make a note. It's the output variable. Now, the question is why these terms? Because if you see this case, see this case, concentration of NaCl is the output variable, and mass flow rate of NaCl is the input function or input variable or forcing function. And why is this the case? Because corresponding to a given mass flow rate of NaCl, you achieved a equilibrium solution, CNaCl1, right? This was for a fixed mass flow rate of NaCl. Now your mass flow rate in the system changed. As a result, your output, which means your concentration of NaCl in the system, also changed. That's why you call u of t, which is on the right hand side, as the forcing function. It is the function which is forcing a change in the output of the system, and y, which is the dependent variable, it's called the output variable. Right now we can do a transform domain analysis of equation 2 directly. Okay, we can do a transform domain analysis of equation 2 directly, but before doing that, we do a small mathematical trick which will make our life easy, and we analyze the system. So system at steady state when a disturbance is introduced to the system, right? And this is regarded as time t is equal to 0. You see, the equation is linear, so therefore you can shift the entire analysis in time and qualitatively nothing will change, right? So you say that I introduce a disturbance in the system, which means that at time t is equal to 0, suddenly there happened a fault uh, in the screw conveyor and the input flow rate decreased from 100 kg per hour to say 60 kg per hour. Okay, so when that happened, the system was already at steady state, which means the system was at steady state CnACl1. Okay, the system was at steady state corresponding to concentration of NaCl1. Now, when this happens, we write the equation number 2 as tau dy steady state by dt plus y steady state equal to k u of steady state t. Okay, and let me write this as equation 3. Okay, remember that we in transform domain analysis are dealing with two steady states. First steady state which already exists in the system, and then suddenly a disturbance is created or introduced to the system, and therefore when you introduce a disturbance to the system, what's going to happen? The system will undergo some dynamical change. So you write, rather you rewrite your dynamical equation or the governing equation at your initial steady state, not the final steady state, at the initial steady state, and then you declare that particular time instant as time t is equal to 0, right? So if that happens, what I can do? What I can do is I can write tau times d by dt, and I will subtract the two equations. So this will become y minus ys plus what was the coefficient? Just 1. So y minus ys equals k u of t minus u steady state t, right? And then I say let y minus ys equal to y star, and this is called the deviation variable. Okay, so you want to know not just the absolute dynamics, or rather you're not really keen on knowing the absolute dynamics of the system. Rather, you want to know how the system deviates from the initial steady state. This is your basic motivation, right? So if I do that, I introduce a deviation variable which casts my equation as tau dy star by dt plus y star equals k, capital K times u star t, right? And this is my governing equation, which is in a very convenient form to apply Laplace transformation. So if you see equation 4 and equation 2, right? Well, they are the same equations with two different variables, but then equation 4 is in deviation variable form, and this will make my life easy to do the Laplace transformation. Let's see how do I do that and why does it make my life easier when I take, so taking the Laplace transformation of equation 4. Okay, so the Laplace transformation of the derivative, if I do it correctly, would be s times the transformed equation. So this will become bar, and let me not forget to put an asterisk here. Okay, minus y asterisk at time t is equal to 0, right? So that's it. Plus this will be y bar. Okay, this is going to be y. Yeah, true. So then this is going to be y s asterisk equals k u asterisk s. Right? Now, why do I say that putting equation in the deviation variable form will make my life easier when I do the Laplace transform analysis? Because of the simple reason that this term is equal to 0. Okay, what is the meaning of this term? The meaning of the second term is that what is the deviation of your system when you just introduce the disturbance. Obviously, the system does not deviate from equilibrium or steady state at time t is equal to 0 when you introduce the deviation, when you introduce the disturbance. So this simply becomes 0, which means I can write this as tau s plus 1. This will become y asterisk s equals k u s, and this brings us to the famous form which you must already know very well, g, which is the general transfer function of the system. This is equal to the transfer to the Laplace transformation of the output variable divided by the Laplace transformation of the input variable, and this will simply be equal to k upon tau s plus 1. Right? This is the general transfer function for a first order system. Right? General transfer function for a first order system. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to determine how the system evolves, as I change my input function, input variable, or I change the forcing function. Okay, so now what all are the different ways in which I can force the system to change? Okay, so let's say that I have my input NaCl mass flow rate. It was 100 kg per hour. Okay, and everything was at steady state. Suddenly what happens is that the flow rate drops to 50 kg per hour. Okay, so let me try to represent it. You had m, this is a function of time. It was maintained at 100 kg per hour. Okay, so this was 100, and in no time, when ideally mathematically representing this situation, in no time what happened is that this mass flow rate reduced to 50 kg per hour. Okay, and you declare this one as time t is equal to 0. That is something which is at our leisure. So now this is the variation of input variable. The output variable would look something like this. the output variable would look something like this, that it corresponded to a fixed concentration, and after a long time again it would correspond to a fixed concentration. After a long time it would correspond to a fixed concentration. But then what I want to know is what happens in between. In this region, how does C vary? Okay, so let's try to understand. So this is so in the situation which is depicted here, this particular forcing function is called an ideal step input or an ideal step function. Okay, so mathematically how do you write it? You write it as u of t equals, one part will always be 0 for t less than 0. This is the dynamics which we are not interested in. We assume that the system was at initial steady state. And then suddenly you give a step input of magnitude A when t is greater than 0. In this case, in this particular case, A was minus 50, right? Your input function decreased. So there is no restriction on the magnitude or the sign of A, right? So fine, we will simply make use of the transfer function, and I have g of s equals k upon tau s plus 1, and this is equal to y of s by u s. So now if I want to, I'm sure you know this method very well, so therefore I'm just proceeding it a little faster. In case you don't remember or you have confusion from your previous teachings, please feel free to ask. So this will become y star s. This is equal to k tau s plus 1 times. Now I will multiply it by u star s. So u star s for this function is simply a upon s. Right? For a constant function, the Laplace transformation is simply constant divided by s. So this will become a upon s. Right? So what do? I need to now. So let me first write it in a more convenient form. This is equal to ak. It's just a constant, does not matter. 1 upon tau s plus 1 multiplied by 1 upon s, right? And then if I need to take the Laplace inverse to get y of t, what do I need? I need to do a partial fraction. I need to do a partial fraction of this, right? So let's see how do I do that? Y bar star asterisk equals ak. So if I do it correctly, this should be 1 upon s. I hope you remember how to do partial fractions. And then minus, this will obviously be 1 upon tau s plus 1, but that will make it the whole thing tau times. So I will make this tau. Okay. So this is 1 upon s minus tau upon tau s plus 1. And since we know how to do Laplace inversion, I know that I should do one last thing. This is 1 upon s minus 1 upon, this will be tau plus s plus 1 by tau, because this converts my equation to a standard form. I understand I'm going a little fast here, but the reason behind that is that I assume you know this. My intention is not to derive this, but to analyze the solution. So if you have any doubt, please stop me and I will clarify it further. So now I am free to take the inverse. So y of t will become as, sorry, a k, 1 upon s is 1 minus, this will become e to the power t by tau. Yes. Okay. It will become, in fact, minus. This will become minus t by tau. Yes. Now I think it is correct. If you find any mistake, please feel free to point out. This is minus. So ak 1 minus e to the power minus t by tau. Right. Now this is the dynamics of the output variable, right? So let's see that if I suddenly add 50 units rather than removing 50 units, if I suddenly add 50 units, see A will simply become negative, so the sign will change, otherwise qualitatively the behavior will remain the same. So if I add 50 units, how is the system going to behave? So let me draw this. AK is simply a constant, so I will put it as unity. So I need to plot y of t as 1 minus e to the power minus t by tau. So let us try to plot it. F of x equals 1 minus e to the power minus t upon tau. So let's call that as a. Okay. Okay, there is a problem. It should be x. Yes, fine. And throughout this analysis, we won't be bothered about negative time. So let's not worry about negative time, what's going on here. So this is the case. Now, what do you see here? One here. So this curve saturates at 1. This curve saturates at 1 because I have set a k equal to 1. Right? So I can simply do one thing. I can multiply this whole thing by a constant, say b. Okay, so if I change b, what's going to be qualitatively the effect? If I change b, my system is going to settle to the new value of b. This b is 2 here, b is now 1.5, b is 1, and so on. So my whole system will now saturate at a different level, which is the ultimate fate. So if you write it in terms of the input and output variables, how are they going to look like? So I have, so let me make some kind of a convention. So my input variable will always be blue. So this is some kind of a input variable. Okay, so this is u of t, right? I have given a step of a. I have given a step of a. And what happens to my output variable? My output variable will remain at this point, steady at this point a. For what? So this is y of t for k. Gain is equal to 1, right? When gain is equal to 1, my ultimate fate is that I'm going to come here. But how am I going to rise? I'm going to rise asymptotically like this. I'm going to rise asymptotically like this. So this is time, right? And this is time t is equal to 0. So this is how my behavior for the first order response of a first order system to a step function going to look like. And the only thing which I'm going to emphasize here is the effect of A. Okay, so what happens when I have set A as unity? Okay, so see here, this is 0.6321, right? Your ultimate, so your marathon is from 0 to 1, right? You are trying to reach the final asymptotic value of 1. So your entire range is 1, and and your x-axis is time, right? So when your time is equal to 1, you have reached 0.632, which means 63.2% of what you wanted to cover, which means 1 minus 0.632, whatever that number is remaining. Now when I go to 2, making this as 0 and this as this entire range as 1, you will again find that this particular point is equal to 0.632. Okay, so let me draw it here. So this entire thing, so the concept is that, let me make certain horizontal lines. I'll make a horizontal line. I'll make a horizontal line. I'll make a horizontal line, and again I'll make a horizontal line. Right? These are supposed to be at equal
Sorry,
time.
your voice is breaking.
Okay. I'm already with the best internet.
Not able to hear you properly.
Okay, let me try. Is it better now? Because I'm already with the Ethernet. It's not Wi-Fi. Is it better?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine. So now I need to cover from 0 to this point, which is 100. Okay, let me say that this is 100 in terms of percentage. So this is 100. When I reach here, this is 63.2, and then when I reach here, this is again 63.2 of this being 100. When I reach here, this is 63.2 of this being 100, and so on, right? So time constant, so basically your rate of change depends upon your instantaneous value, and it covers 63.2% of the remaining, the 63.2 percentage of the remaining. So this was the remaining one, this is the remaining one, this is the remaining one, and so on. So your system covers 63.2% of the remaining disturbance in one time constant. In one time constant. Okay, and therefore in nearly 4 time constants, you reach near, sorry, not nearly 4 time constants. In 4 time constants, you reach nearly 98.5% of the forced function. So let's see if I am correct. So in one time constant, you reached 63.2 to be exact. In 2 time constants, you reached 86.5. In 3 time constants, you reached 95%. And in 4 time constants, you reach 98.2. 98.2. So to be exact, this is 98.2%. And if you want to still go 5 time constants, let's see how does it go 99.3. 99.3. So this is 99.3. Okay, so now if you have to ask that how much time will the system require to reach the new steady state, well, you need to know the time constant and you don't need to do any experiment then. You see, you just write the governing equation, and from the governing equation straight away you will see that the ratio A1 by A0, this is the time constant. This is the ratio. If you can precisely write your governing equation in this form, then if you have A1 by A0, then you know if you know the magnitude of this, then you multiply it by 4, and that will be the time requirement for your system to reach 98.2 times 98.2 percentage of the induced forcing function. If you want to be even more closer, you have to go up to 5 time constants and it will become 99.3. To reach exact 100, you require infinite time constants because the function is exponential, right? So it will not never actually, it will reach the value 1 only at t tends to infinity. Okay, by 1 I mean 100%. Okay, so now if you are dealing with mechanical systems which are inherently, or chemical systems which are inherently really relatively slower, you can go up to 3 time constants or 4 time constants. The general convention in electronics community or electrical community is that you have to go up to 5 time constants because you know the electronic systems are inherently much faster compared to chemical or mechanical systems. So depending upon the domain you are in, you can decide upon that, right? Fine. So now the question is, when you say that, so in YY you would be asked this question that how do you define a time constant? So the general notion which comes to mind is that it is the time required to cover 63.2% of the forced input function, right? This is the general answer that you would give. Now, does this mean that the concept of time constant is specific only to the concept the ideal step function? Okay, you see what is the problem here? What is the conceptual problem? The conceptual problem is that you wrote here the governing equation, which was tau times dy by dt plus y equals k times u of t. Okay, so right there, whether or not you induce any kind of disturbance to your system, you already have the concept of time constant in your system, right? But when you define time constant for your system, you say that it is the time required to cover 63.2% of the forcing function, which is a step forcing function. Now, does that mean that if you do not use a ideal step function, you cannot define a time constant? The answer is no. Okay, so the time constant is not specifically linked only to ideal step function. It is applicable to all the functions, all the forcing functions. Now, can we take an example of another forcing function and understand this in an analogous manner? So let's try to understand this for a ramp function. So ideal ramp function. So I go for ideal ramp function. Ramping means to increase, and obviously depending upon the magnitude or the sign, you can increase or decrease the function as well. So what is an ideal ramp function? U of t equals 0. I will always write this, although it will not have any major significance. Time t greater less than 0, and at for t greater than 0. This is your forcing function, right? And a again is the magnitude. So I will just, for my particular analysis, I will just set up A as 1. So how does my input look like? Let's see. In this previous case, g of x equals 1. Okay, so let this be our convention. The green one is the forcing function and the red one is the output function. Okay, so the at time t is equal to 0, I am not worried about negative time. So at time t is equal to 0, my function started with 1, it remained at 1 all the time. Whereas my output function started from 0 and it asymptotically met 1. Ideally, it would meet 1 at time t is equal to infinity. But at nearly 5 time constants, it was already beyond 99% of the total range, right? So now let us repeat this for an ideal ramp function. So my ideal ramp function g of x was a times t, so it will be simply x. Okay, so this is my ramp function. Again, I will not worry about negative time. If you are interested in mathematics, you can do this analysis for negative time also. I encourage you to do that. For this particular course, we will not worry about that. So this is how my let's say I am in a situation where my brine solution which I am making is totally at say 1000 gallons per hour, and then suddenly there is a large demand, and then I need to increase the production rate of my plant, and then what I will do is I will increase the RPM of my screw conveyor, and the RPM is increasing linearly as a ramp function, and correspondingly my mass flow rate of the salt to the system also is increasing in this manner. What you see here, right? Now, what would the output function look like? So let us derive it. So y bar star s will be equal to k times tau s plus 1 times now u star s. What will this be equal to? This will be equal to a times s squared. I again am assuming that you remember Laplace transforms. Please go back and do a quick brush up of Laplace transforms. Okay, so this will become a times s squared, a times s squared. So this is y bar s equals ak. Again, I know the effect of ak, so I will not worry about that. 1 upon s squared, 1 upon tau s plus 1. Rather, I can also do this as tau 1 upon tau, right? Fine. So then you know the procedure. You will split it as partial fraction, a upon s plus b upon s squared plus c upon s plus 1 upon tau. Okay. So I'm writing the final expression because, as I said, I'm more interested in doing the analysis of the dynamics. I'm sure this is something you must have done previously. So how does the dynamics look like? Y of t, I have the final expression in front of me, is equal to a k tau e to the power minus t by tau plus t by tau minus 1. Okay, so this is the dynamics. Okay, so now can I plot this? Let me plot this one. So ak I will not worry about, it's simply 1. So this is f of x equal to tau. So this is, I'll say it as a multiplied by e to the power minus x by a, e to the power minus x by a plus x by a plus x by a minus 1 minus 1. Yes, you see here. So now we need to analyze the dynamics from two perspectives. Okay, first of all, okay, so before that, time constant is always positive, so let us set this as a positive number. First of all, what is the effect of time constant? So all that the time constant is doing is that, you see, for us, if I need to analyze this system, I'll see at I will follow a particular t. So t is equal to 1. You had a forcing function which was larger in magnitude, and smaller magnitude there was a output variable. And at large time intervals, you see that these two output function and the input function, they never merge. There is always a fixed gap between the two, which means that if you start increasing your input function in a linear manner, which follows the equation of the form a times t, then your output will also follow the input. The output will follow the input, but it will never be able to catch the input. If you keep on increasing the input function, the output function will never be able to catch the input function. This was not the case for the step function. Eventually, although not 100%, but at least 99%, 99.5%, and so on, you could reach the ultimate range that you had to span. But in case of a ramp input, your output variable will never be able to meet the input variable. There will always be a lag, but there would be a lag in the time difference. See, you wanted the value to be 10 for the output variable, and it actually became 10, but at a larger time instant. Right, so you will have to wait a little more for the system to reach the new state which you will need for, corresponding to the input function. First important observation. Second important observation, the effect of time constant. If there is a large time constant, what you will need is that there will be a large difference between the input and the output variable. Large time constant, the difference between the lag for the system to reach the input value will be larger. Second important observation for time constant. And the third important observation, which I believe is the most important observation conceptually, is like this. See, as time t tends to infinity, you will always see that there is a same difference between input and output. 27. So this is 28, and this is 28, 35, 34, 41. So the difference between these two along the x-axis as well as along the y-axis remains constant at very large time intervals. But what happens initially? Initially, there is a transient. See, the difference here is small, and the difference keeps on increasing along the x-axis. Along the y-axis also, the difference between the black and the purple curves are small, and the difference keeps on increasing till it becomes a constant. Now, the point is that if I set my time constant as 1, okay, and then let us do this analysis. So my question is that ultimately, if as time t tends to infinity, these two, the difference is going to become constant, when will it become constant? And the answer to that question comes from the time constant. After 5 time constants, after 5 time constants, the difference will become equal. So now in case of step function, you had a goal and your goal was to reach and to make the difference 0. Now in case of a ramp function, your goal is to maintain a constant difference. The difference was smaller initially. So in one time constant, what you will see is you have reached only 36%, which means 1 minus 0.36 is again 0.63. So you have reached 63% of the difference in one time constant. You have reached again, I will have to subtract 1 minus this value. So you have reached around 90, which we saw previously. You have reached around 98% of the time constant in 4 time constants. Here it was there. And if I reach 5 time constants, if I reached 5 time constants here, then the x-axis difference and y-axis difference at different time intervals will remain exactly constant. Okay, so the concept of time constant doesn't mean that it is there only for a step function. It is there for other functions also. It means that if the system adjusts to a new steady state, if your system adjusts to a new steady state, there will be transients in the system. And the time constant means that after 5 time constants or so, there would not be any transients in the system. See, here you have transient because the difference is changing. Here there are no transients because the differences are not changing. Okay, so this is a very conceptual mistake which generally students make by pinpointing that the concept of time constant is only for step function. Please make sure that you don't have this. We'll take a small break, and if you have any doubt, please feel free to ask.
Hello, sir. Hello,
Yes.
sir. Sir, actually, I lost my connectivity, sir. Can you please repeat that time constant significance for this ramp function, sir? You explained the
Yeah.
third point, sir.
Yes. Yes. You see here, when so the first observation that we make is that when your input function is increasing in a ramp manner, your output function is never able to catch it at the same time instant. It is taking a longer time, right? So how much longer does it take for the system to catch up? This is the question. So at time t tends to infinity, you will see all the x and y axis here. I go along x-axis, I go along y-axis, x-axis, y-axis, x-axis, y-axis. The difference is exactly the same, right? So therefore, the system is time invariant at larger time intervals. But if you be here, you see initially there was a small difference in x, small difference in y, the difference increased in x and y, and difference kept on increasing till it became and reached this value, right? So what is the significance of time constant? At 4 time or 5 time constants, the ultimate difference that you are going to reach, 98 or 99% of that would be reached before. So now the question is, if you have to sample, if you're doing an experiment and you want to sample that, how much is the lag between the input and the output? So you must do it only after 5 time constants, because after 5 time constants, whether you do it after 8 minutes or 9 minutes or 1 hour or 100 hours, this difference will remain exactly the same. Whereas if you do it initially, there are transients in your system, so you will get different time differences. This is the basic idea. Does that answer your question? No, you're not audible. It's still not clear to me. I hope I have answered you. No. Am I the only one who is not able to hear, or it's a general problem?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir. You mentioned about the system being time in. Hello.
Yes, Vedant, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, sir. You mentioned about the system being time invariant. Sir, can you please explain the difference between like when we use the terms time invariant and time independent? Like this
Well,
system is clearly not time independent. Like it is
yes.
changing with time. But what is can you give the mathematical? Can you explain it mathematically? Like what is time invariance and time variance?
Okay, it's a very good question. So now that depends upon, so all of these definitions are the same when the derivative with respect to time becomes 0. Okay, so the system is time independent or time invariant when the derivative of your variable becomes 0 with respect to time, right? So in this region, for example, in this region where your dy by dt also is 0 and du by dt also is 0, right? So therefore the system is time invariant in this particular case. Now for the case of a ramp function, the situation is interesting. So in case of a ramp function, you have a situation like this. You have one situation which is like this. This is the input function and this is the output function, right? Now neither the input function nor the output function derivative are 0, right? So this du by dt is not 0. Dy by dt is also not 0. But if you see the difference between these two, okay, so the difference, the derivative of y minus u at larger time intervals, if you see, this difference will become 0. Okay, and that's the reason why I say that the system is time invariant with respect to this dynamics, the difference dynamics, not in an absolute sense. Okay, does that answer your question? It's a good question, but it depends how you pose your problem. Is it clear?
So basically, we are looking at the difference in slopes in this case.
Yes.
Like we are not focusing on the time access exactly. Like at a
Yes.
particular time, what is the difference between?
Yes.
Uh,
So the system in absolute sense is not time invariant in this particular case because your forcing function itself is not time invariant, right? It
okay.
never
Okay.
in future it becomes time invariant. So system in absolute sense is never time invariant, but if you see the differences, they become a time invariant.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir,
Any
so
other?
does the definition of time invariance vary? Like in the previous case, we were defining it in absolute terms. In this case, we are defining it in terms of the slopes of the output and input function. So
Yes.
does
See,
the
that's
definition vary depending on the?
yeah, so see, that is precisely the reason why I wanted to make this clarification that do not plug in or make a couple of time constant and the input function, the step input function, because the step input function attains time invariance sometime in future. Okay, so therefore the system as a whole goes and becomes time invariant when you have step input, and therefore the definition of there is a direct correspondence between the definition of time constant and the step input function. For other functions which themselves are never time invariant, you cannot define the time constant directly in terms of the system itself. You have to define it in terms of the difference. And we will come to this in case of sinusoidal function just in a couple of minutes. Again, this will become clear. Okay, is it clear? Okay, I hope this is clear. If are there any more questions? If not, then let us okay. Let us first start with sinusoidal input itself, so that we have a continuation of the doubt which was raised. So sinusoidal input. You can call it as input, and the response will be called the sinusoidal response. So u of t will become 0, t less than 0, and a sine omega t as t is greater than 0. Okay, so we know that u star s is a omega s squared plus omega, right? So therefore, what will you do? You will have y of s is equal to a omega s squared plus omega squared times k tau s plus 1, right? Fine. And again, I'm sure you can do it with partial fraction and find the final output. I'm writing down the expression directly. If you have any doubt in deriving it, please reach out to me. I will give you the answer. So this is a k omega. I'll not give you the answer. I will tell you how to solve it. Upon 1 plus tau squared omega squared. Sorry. This will be equal to ak omega tau upon 1 plus tau squared omega squared e to the power minus t upon tau plus 1 upon root over omega squared tau squared plus 1 sine omega t plus phi. Okay, where phi is tan inverse minus omega tau. Okay, so now I would like to see how does this response look like, and what exactly can I invoke as the definition of time constant from this particular function. So let me first write down the input. I will not worry about, so my input was a sine omega t. So let's not worry about a, just let us set a as 1. So sine ax, fine. So this is how, again, as I said, the input itself is not time invariant, so therefore the system in itself will never become time invariant. But let's see if we can see something else. So this is so f of x equals omega tau upon 1 plus tau squared omega squared. So omega, no, not a, yeah, omega, correct. Omega tau upon 1 plus omega squared tau squared tau squared. Is that the expression? Yes. E to the power minus t by tau. So e to the power minus x by b plus 1 upon square root 1 plus a squared b squared b squared sine a x plus c. Yeah, fine. So I have the input, I have the output. First of all, let me go at very large time instances, and what do I see? So let me make some arrangements. So b is what? B is omega. No, b is the time constant. Fine. And then c is the lag. So let us just keep them overlapping. We imagine a situation in which they overlap. So what do I see? What I see is that there is no difference in the relative differences in the behavior of the system. Okay, your input is sinusoidal, you're forcing the system to be sinusoidal, your output also is sinusoidal. Okay, now depending upon this value of tan inverse minus omega tau, there can be a lag. I have set this just for the ease of visualization as 0. But then what happens in the initial phases? Let's see in the initial phases. In the initial phases, they do not match, right? They match only later. Okay, and this is okay. Omega a was omega, so this just gives you uh, the frequency. So let's not worry about that. But what about B? You see here, B changes completely the initial dynamics. Okay, B was the time constant, right? So what is the meaning of time constant? Again, in case of sinusoidal response, ultimate response is that there would be a sinusoidal output, and the input will be sinusoidal, the output will also be sinusoidal. They would be different in magnitude, they would be different in their phases, but the differences will always be constant at large time intervals. But at smaller time intervals, there would be transients. In fact, if you see in the negative direction, this is crazy. Okay, so but we are not interested in negative ones. You see here that you start from a different output, and as the time constant reaches to a value which is more than 4, more than 5, then you start seeing exact same trend. Okay, so again, this is the definition of this is the importance of time constant and the output to a sinusoidal input. Okay, any doubt? Or so after this, is there any doubt or any question? No doubt, no question. Okay, so then let us summarize one small observation for inputs and outputs. So so you have step input. Okay, how does the step input look like? Okay, so how does the step input look like? It looks like this. It looks like this. How does the output look like? It looks like this. Fine. Okay, so then that means the moment you have a step input, you can predict what's going to happen, right? Fine. What about ramp input? The ramp input was like this, and the ramp output was like this. Fine. Then we have sinusoidal input. And what would be the output? The initial one would be crazy, but ultimately it would follow the same one. Okay. Then you can say that I have a pulse input. It's not very difficult to derive. I have a pulse input, right? So now pulse input is like two step inputs. One is going up, the other one is going down. So how would your output look like? It would look like this. It would go up and then it would come down. Right? This is the pulse input. And impulse input, which is ideally okay, it's very difficult to draw. Yeah, this is like the impulse input and the output would look like this. Right? Because again, it's like two impulse inputs which are very close together. Right? Now we see an interesting situation. The interesting situation that we see is that we so let's analyze these five graphs first. In the first graph, you had your input which suddenly increase the value, and then the system tries to catch it, but there is a delay, right? So the system is trying to catch up, but there is a delay. In the ramp input, the system is going on increasing and the input is going on increasing and the system is trying to catch it up all the time. So you know the behavior that one is running, the other one is following. Similar manner, you have a sinusoidal one and then there is a lag, and it tries to catch it up. Exact same behavior here. You go up, you go down, the system tries to catch it up, and by the time it reaches up, it realizes that the input has again come down, so it again starts coming down, and exactly the same behavior here also. Okay, so why does this happen? This lag, okay, so let me write down this lag happens because of non-zero time constant. Because the time constant of the system is non-zero, there happens a lag in the system. Okay, so what if you have a system which is very quick to respond, that the time constant tau tends to become zero. Okay, the time constant is zero. Okay, so then what will happen in such a system? Your system will respond very quickly. Your system will respond very quickly. Okay, so, or in other words, the system would adapt to the new state very quickly without any transient. Okay, the system would will adapt to the new, so the system will adapt to new state without transients, right? Which means what will happen? What will happen is that the case would be like this, that you will be here, you will be here, you will be here, you will be here, and you will be here for tau tends to 0. Okay, fine. And then why did that happen? It happens, well, you can derive this very easily like this. I have tau dy by dt plus y equals k u of t, and g of s equals k tau s plus 1. So now when tau tends to be 0, g of s is simply equal to k, right? G of s is simply equal to k, which means that you have only gain in your system. So there is only gain and no time constant, right? And such systems are called pure gain systems. And what is nice about pure gain systems? Well, you know how the system is going to behave. Okay, if the gain is not equal to 1, if the gain is 100, for example, you know that the system output will simply become 100 times the input. But what will be the transients in your system? There won't be any transients in the system. What would be the the differences in the system with respect to the initial conditions? There won't be any differences in the system. And if there is a time constant, you know how the behavior would look like. But what makes the entire analysis really very interesting is a case where you do not have tau which is equal to 0. Okay, but a case, so let us consider this case. So I have a1 dy by dt plus a0y equal to b times u of t, right? Now we have a case, consider a case when a0 is equal to 0. Okay, a0 is equal to 0, which means, and from where what will happen? I can write dy by dt equal to b by a1 times u of t, right? B by a1 times u of t. Now this is interesting. Why? Let's do one thing. So dy by dt equals k times u of t. Let us not write k times, let's write k1 times, right? Because we have already used the term k, where k1 is what? B by a1, right? So therefore, what's going to happen? I can write this as s times y bar of s equals k1 times u bar of s, or in other words, my transfer function will look like k1 upon s, right? My transfer function looks like k1 upon s. Okay, and such systems are called pure capacity systems. Why are they called pure capacity systems? Let us look into it. Okay, so now for a step input, what was the function? So for step input we have u bar of s equals a upon s, right? A upon s, which means y bar of s is equal to a by a k by s squared, right? And I can write this that y of t is simply equal to, I know this is the Laplace transform of A K T, right? So now what is interesting in this particular case? Let me draw and show you. So your input function is this. This is your input function, right? So what is AKT? How does AKT look like? My AKT looks like this. Okay. And how should, and what does this mean? This means that my output variable will keep on increasing linearly with time. My output variable will keep on increasing linearly with time. And this is in contrast to this expression that we derived previously, y of t equals ak 1 minus e to the power minus t by tau. Right? We derived this previously, and following that, we know that my output should look like this. My output should look like this. So my output has completely changed. My output behavior has completely changed. Whereas I was expecting a saturating behavior, I no more have a saturating behavior in this particular case. Rather, I have a linear increase in this particular case. This is strange, right? Now let me take another example. Okay, what is the case for a ramp response, for example? So y ramp input. Okay, so y bar of s is what? A by s squared. Sorry, not y bar of s, u bar of s. So y bar of s is what? A k by s cube, which means y of t is a k t squared. Anything else? A k t squared by 2. Right? So this is the response. Fine. Now, what were you expecting the response to be? You are expecting. So this is my input. The input is ramp. So this is your input. This is what you were expecting. Your actual response is this. Right? And what were you expecting the response to be? You were expecting the response as this. Right? As we saw previously. So therefore, what this means is that when you look into this equation, so what is the take home message for this entire analysis? When you look into the input function, which is like in this first case, you have a step input, then you have a ramp input, then you have sinusoidal input, you have pulse input, and then you have a impulse input. If you do not bother about the magnitudes, absolute magnitudes of the parameters tau and k in your system, you would expect that there would be a lag in the system. So therefore, if you induce a lag in the step input, your output would look something like this. Something like this, right? You would expect that behavior. Similarly, you would expect other behaviors. Now, you take one extreme where you say that the time constant is just 0, which means there is no lag in the system. There are no transients. When there is no lag in the system, there are no transients in the system. Then what's going to happen? Then what's going to happen is that you will see the green behavior, that the system adapts quickly without any delay to the new to the new conditions. But then you have pure gain system where your intuition of just invoking a lag in your system and saying that okay, the system would continue in this particular manner, it will all break down, and you will see that the saturating response that you would expect from the system uh, in case of an impulse, in case of a step input, will no more be saturating, it will keep on increasing, and so on. Okay, and such systems are called pure gain systems, and you need to be really careful while dealing with these parameters. Again, as I have been emphasizing for my previous lectures also, the parameters can change the entire game, they can change the entire response drastically. So therefore you have to change, you have to look into the parameters very carefully and analyze the system. Okay, so this was for a first order system. So for a what will happen for a second order system? So let us look into second order system. As we change the first order system to a standard form, we do the same thing to a second order system. So if the general second order system is a2 d2y by dt squared plus a1 dy by dt plus a0 y equals b u of t, then what would we do? We would like to make the coefficient of y as 1. So then I will write here as a2 by a0 d2y by dt squared plus a1 by a0 dy by dt plus y equals b by a0 u of t, right? And now, as we defined time constant and gain in the previous case, we have certain standard quantities, and we define a2 by a1, a2 by a0 as tau squared, where tau is called the natural period of oscillation. Now, if you remember, in our state space analysis, we said that first order systems can never exhibit any oscillatory behavior. Second order systems and higher order systems can, there is a possibility that they can exhibit oscillatory behavior. Okay, and that's why the concept of natural period of oscillations come. So tau is the natural period of oscillation. You have a1 by a0 is 2 tau zeta, where zeta is called the damping coefficient. Okay, fine. So let us try to remind ourselves of again the behavior of a second order system. We said that you can have an oscillatory behavior. The oscillations can continue without damping, or which means they can continue without reduction in the amplitude or without increase in the amplitude, or the amplitudes may change with time. They may increase or they may decrease. So damping coefficient will give you this, it signifies whether the response or the adaptation to the new steady state will be asymptotic or it would be oscillatory, and whether you can expect oscillations of larger amplitude in your system. Okay, so that concept from state space domain reflects here directly as the damping coefficient. And finally, straightforward, you have b by a0. This is k, which is again gain. gain of the system, right? So therefore, I can write here in the deviation variable form, I can write this expression as tau squared. I'm trying to write it. Please cross check if it is correct. This should be s squared y bar s, and then the other things will become 0 plus 2 tau zeta s y bar s plus y bar s equals k u bar of s, right? The terms corresponding to the initial conditions have all been set to 0 following the deviation variable representation. So I can write the generalized transfer function g of s as k upon tau squared s squared plus 2 zeta tau s plus 1. Okay, so this is the general transfer function of the system, right? Now, the analysis which we did today for the first order system with all of these input functions, input variables, can be repeated with this one. Can be repeated with this one. So this is a homework for you to do and repeat this. I'm giving you the general strategy. So y bar of s, what's going to happen? You're going to write this as k tau squared s squared plus 2 zeta tau s plus 1 times this will be some function of s, right? In fact, let me write it down. Y some function of s. It will be u of s, right? And then what will you do from here? You will do partial fractions. You will do partial fractions, and from those partial fractions you will write the response in the exact same manner that we did for the rest of the cases. Okay, and then what you will find out is, depending upon the solutions of this quadratic equation, solutions of quadratic equation, you will either get asymptotic response, you may get oscillatory, response. Okay, and this is again, if you compare it vis-a-vis the state space domain modeling, you will find that it's exactly the same thing which happens. So on a whole, whereas while you see that the second order systems on a whole can show oscillatory response between two steady states also. So let me draw it. So let me draw it. So you have steady state 1, initial steady state, you have steady state 2, the final steady state. Okay, so steady state 1, steady state 2. From the transform domain analysis, from the state space domain analysis, we saw that second order systems can can be decaying, they can be increasing, they can be oscillatory. Oscillatory can be center solutions, which means they continue with the same magnitude, or they can be spiral source, which means they blow up, or they can be spiral sink, which means they will decay down again to the equilibrium solution. All of these are for absolute dynamics. Now between two steady states also you will find that it's possible that you go to a new steady state like this, or you oscillate, and so on. And all of these depends upon these variables or these parameters which you have defined here. Okay. So now based upon this, as following the request of quite a few of you, I have postponed the test which was supposed to happen in the next week. I understand you all, I don't know how, but you all will be away traveling. So what I am doing is I'm not having a lecture in the next week, and I have uploaded questions which you are supposed to solve. So this is problem sheet 5. So let us quickly discuss the problem sheets. So we had previously solved this Newton's law of cooling problem in state space domain, right? So the equation was given as dt by dt equals minus ht minus ht plus ht infinity. Now you have to solve this exact same problem using the transform domain analysis, right? So what you will have to do is first convert this equation to a standard form. And what is our standard form? The standard form is this. Our standard form is this. Tau dy by dx dy by dt plus y plus is equals k u of t. And you will see the forcing function in this case is simply h times t infinity. H times t infinity is your forcing function. So if you change the surrounding temperature, obviously the system temperature will be forced to change. Okay, so you know the system already. The system has been described very well. If you have forgotten, please go back to the lecture recording which we did right in the first lecture. And then what you have to do is, after this, establish the response of the system when subjected to an ideal step function of magnitude A. So you will have to determine the response for this particular specific Newton's law of cooling problem. Identify the time constant and static gain of the system. What is the time constant for this particular case, and what is the time constant for, or what is the static gain for this system? Okay. Second, repeat part A with pulse, with ideal pulse, ideal impulse, and ramp and sinusoidal function. What we did today, instead of dy by dt and so on, you have to solve this problem specifically for this Newton's law of cooling problem. And then parts A and B for pure gain and pure capacity system. Okay, so this is also what we discussed today. So please repeat this. You have 2 weeks time. Please repeat this. And the second problem is this. Again, spring mass system. We have solved this for a sinusoidal input. We already solved this in lecture number 2. The exact same equation was given to you, where C is called the damping coefficient, in case the spring constant, U of t in previous case was sine of omega t, right? The system is known to you. Then what do you have to do? Analyze the system in transform domain and determine the natural period of oscillation, damping coefficient, and steady state gain. Again, change this equation to this form which I wrote here, this standard form. Yes, this one, this standard form, tau squared d2y by dx d2y by dt squared plus 2 tau zeta dy by dt plus y equals k of u of t. So you have to change in this form and determine what will be the natural period of oscillation, damping coefficient, and steady state gain. Write the expression for transfer function, specific transfer function in terms of not the general transfer function, but in terms of this specific M, C, K, and so on. Okay, what would be the transfer function? Derive the condition for system to exhibit underdamped, critically damped, and overdamped response, and analyze the response for step input. Now, some expressions which you have already derived during your undergrad, I have given this as ready-made. So if all what is expected from you is that you analyze this properly. I assume that you already know how to derive these expressions. So the expressions I've given to you, you already know what is the meaning of rise time, what is the meaning of decay ratio, what is the meaning of overshoot, and all of these parameters. So you are already given this. I don't expect you to remember this or by heart this, but I definitely expect you to know how these were derived in your previous process dynamics and control or instrumentation and process control courses. Okay, open, or if you have forgotten everything, open the book by Stephanopoulos or Kaufner and things like that. If you can do at all, get back to me. I will guide you appropriately. Okay, so these are the two questions. Repeat the parts for pulse, impulse, RAM input. The possibilities are infinite. You have to just go to the online plotter, see, change the variables and see the effect of the variables on the dynamics. Okay. So no lecture on the next week. Following the week, we will continue again. If you have any doubts or any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, if there are no questions, we meet the week following the next week. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.